January 1964, Daytona International Speedway. The grandstands are packed. The air smells like gasoline and burnt rubber. Engines scream down the straight at over 180 miles per hour. And then, something strange happens. The Fords start disappearing. One by one, the blue ovals fade from the front of the pack, and charging past them, loud, brutal, unstoppable, is a brand new engine nobody fully understands yet. Chrysler's 426 HEMI. But what almost nobody knows is that this wasn't just a race. It was the beginning of a secret war. A war fought not with guns, but with pistons, camshafts, and cubic inches. A war between two of the most powerful engines ever built, the 426 HEMI and Ford's 427. You think you know this story? Not like this. Because behind the headlines, behind the trophies, there was a brutal engineering battle, filled with failures, desperation, and a level of rivalry that nearly tore NASCAR apart. And what happened next changed American racing forever. At the start of the 1960s, Ford was dominating NASCAR. Their FE Series engines, especially the 427, were practically unbeatable. With a 4.23-inch bore and a 3.78-inch stroke, the 427 cubic inch V8 was a masterpiece of brute force engineering. In race trim, it was making over 500 horsepower. Some teams claimed closer to 520 with dual 4-barrel carburetors and aggressive cam profiles. Torque, around 480 lb-ft. Enough to twist drive shafts and shred tires like paper. The sound alone was intimidating, a deep, thunderous roar that rattled pit crews and shook the ground as cars blasted past at full throttle. Drivers said you could feel the vibration through the steering wheel, through your chest, like the engine was alive and angry. But raw power wasn't the only advantage. Ford's engineers had solved one of the biggest problems in racing engines: oiling. Early big blocks suffered from oil starvation at high RPM. At 6,500, 7,000 RPM, oil pressure would drop, bearings would overheat, and then catastrophic failure. Metal would seize, rods would snap, and in an instant, hundreds of hours of work and thousands of dollars would explode into a cloud of smoke and shrapnel. So Ford did something radical. They created the side oiler design. Instead of sending oil to the top of the engine first, they routed a dedicated oil gallery along the side of the block, feeding the crankshaft first. The most critical component got oil before anything else. Simple idea, game-changing result. Engines that could survive long races at full throttle. Engines that could run wide open for 3, 4, 5 hours without missing a beat. Engines that laughed at sustained 7,000 RPM like it was nothing. And for a while, Ford ruled everything. Their Galaxies dominated speedways across the country. Wins piled up. Championships followed. The blue oval became synonymous with victory. Ford's marketing department couldn't have scripted it better, but there was a problem. Chrysler was watching, and they were losing. By 1963, Chrysler's 413 and 426 max wedge engines were powerful, but they had limitations. They used wedge-shaped combustion chambers, which restricted airflow at high RPM. They made good torque, but they couldn't match Ford's high-speed efficiency. Chrysler executives were getting desperate. Race on Sunday, sell on Monday, that was the formula. But you can't sell performance if you're not winning races. Dealers were complaining. Sales were slipping. Something had to change. So Chrysler engineers went back to something radical, something they had experimented with in the 1950s, but never fully unleashed: the hemispherical combustion chamber, the HEMI. Now here's where things get interesting. A hemispherical chamber allows for larger valves, better airflow, and more efficient combustion. Air and fuel flow in and out almost perfectly straight, instead of being forced around corners like in wedge designs. The valves themselves could be positioned at angles, allowing them to be bigger, much bigger. The intake valves on the HEMI measured over 2 inches in diameter. Exhaust valves weren't far behind. More air in, more exhaust out, better breathing at every RPM range. The result? More power at higher RPM, but also more complexity, more cost, more engineering challenges. Each cylinder head required its own rocker shaft assembly. The valve train was completely different from conventional designs. Parts couldn't be shared with other engines. Manufacturing required specialized tooling. Chrysler didn't care. They built the 426 Hemi from the ground up as a race engine. Same 4.25-inch bore, same 3.75-inch stroke, 426 cubic inches of pure aggression. But the internals were something else entirely. Forged pistons, hardened crankshaft, connecting rods that could withstand explosive force, cycle after cycle. Compression ratio? Around 12.5.1 in race trim. That's insane by any standard. Modern engines rarely touch 11.1. This thing was built to run on high-octane racing fuel and nothing else. Horsepower? Officially rated at 425, but that was a lie. On the dyno, these engines were pushing well over 550 horsepower. Some insiders claimed closer to 600 with open headers and race tuning. One engineer later admitted, "We knew what it made. We just didn't want everyone else to know." And when they brought it to Daytona in 1964, it didn't just compete, it destroyed everything. Richard Petty crossed the line first in the Daytona 500. HEMI cars finished first, second, and third. Of the top 10 finishers, 7 were running Hemis. The gap wasn't close, it was embarrassing. Ford teams scrambled, engineers checked data, mechanics tore down engines looking for answers, but there was no secret trick they'd missed, no hidden advantage they could copy. Chrysler had simply built a better engine. Ford didn't just lose, they were humiliated. And worse, they knew it was coming again. Next week, next month, all season long. But then, the real nightmare started. NASCAR stepped in. The Hemi was too dominant, too advanced, too disruptive, so they banned it. Officially, the reason was that Chrysler hadn't produced enough street versions to qualify under stock car rules. NASCAR required a certain number of production vehicles to homologate an engine for racing. Chrysler had only built a handful, all race engines, none destined for showroom floors. So technically, NASCAR was right. But everyone knew the truth. The Hemi was simply too powerful. Other manufacturers were threatening to pull out. Ford was furious. The competition was becoming one-sided. And just like that, the most advanced engine in NASCAR was gone. At least for a while. Chrysler's response? They pulled out of NASCAR entirely, took their cars, took their teams, took their money, and left Ford racing against basically nobody. The 1965 season was a hollow victory for Ford. They won races, they won championships. But everyone knew it didn't mean much. You can't claim dominance when your only real competitor refused to show up. But here's the twist most people don't realize. Ford didn't stop developing the 427. They doubled down. They pushed it further than ever before. Engineers started experimenting with head designs, trying to match the Hemi's airflow without copying the hemispherical chamber. They introduced high-riser heads, then medium riser, then the insane tunnel port design. Massive intake ports so large, the push rods had to run through tubes inside them. Picture that for a second. The intake runners were so huge that push rods, critical valve actuation components, had to be routed through tunnels in the port walls just to fit. Airflow was incredible. Peak horsepower climbed even higher. Some tunnel port 427s were making north of 600 horsepower. But there was a cost. Low-end torque suffered. The massive ports didn't fill properly at lower RPM. Street drivability was terrible, and reliability started to slip. The tunnel port engines were fragile, temperamental. They needed constant attention. One mechanic reportedly said, at 7,000 RPM, it sounded like it wanted to tear itself apart. And sometimes it did. Valve springs would fail. Push rods would break. Head gaskets would blow under extreme cylinder pressure. Meanwhile, Chrysler was quietly preparing for a comeback. In 1966, they released the Street HEMI. Now it was legal. Same basic architecture, same massive heads, but slightly toned down for production. Compression dropped to around 10.25/1. Camshaft profiles were milder. Valve springs softened just enough to survive thousands of street miles. Horsepower was officially rated at 425 again, but real-world numbers were closer to 470. Torque? A monstrous 490 lb-ft. And because Chrysler was now selling them in Chargers, Roadrunners, and GTX, NASCAR had to let them race. And when it returned to NASCAR, the war reignited. At tracks like Talladega and Daytona, the Hemi's raw power gave it an edge on the straights. It could pull harder, longer, and faster than almost anything else. Cars were hitting speeds nobody thought possible. 190, 195, nearly 200 miles per hour. Drivers talked about the sensation of holding the throttle wide open down the banking, feeling the car drift slightly as the tires fought to grip at those insane speeds. But Ford's 427 still had one advantage: durability. That side oiler system meant it could survive long races without catastrophic failure. While HEMIs were powerful, they were also temperamental. Engines overheated, valve trains failed, parts wore out faster under extreme stress. The Hemi's complexity was both its strength and its weakness. More parts meant more potential failure points. More precision meant tighter tolerances, and tighter tolerances meant things could go wrong fast. So the question became, power or survival? At the 1967 Daytona 500, the battle was at its peak. Cars screamed down the banking at nearly 190 mph. Engines running flat out for hours, no margin for error. One driver later said, "You weren't just racing the other cars, you were racing your engine." Pit crews monitored oil pressure religiously, water temps, RPM gauges. Any flicker of a warning and you backed off or risked everything. And that's exactly what this war had become, a battle of engineering philosophies. Ford focused on balance, reliability, endurance. Chrysler chased maximum power, maximum speed, no compromises. And for a while, both approaches worked. Wins were traded back and forth, records were broken, speeds climbed higher every year, but behind the scenes, cracks were forming, costs were skyrocketing. These engines weren't cheap. A race-prepped 427 could cost thousands of dollars in the 1960s. Adjusted for inflation, that's tens of thousands today. And that was just the engine. Add in the specialized parts, the constant rebuilds, the expert mechanics who knew how to tune them, and you were looking at massive budgets. The Hemi was even worse. Complex heads, massive components, constant maintenance. Every race meant a full teardown. Every component inspected. Anything questionable got replaced. Teams were burning through engines just to stay competitive. Smaller teams couldn't keep up. The gap between factory-backed operations and privateers grew wider every season. And NASCAR had enough. The sport was supposed to be about stock cars. Cars that regular people could buy. But these engines, they were pure race machines. By the early 1970s, new regulations started choking performance. Compression ratios dropped, fuel restrictions tightened, emissions laws loomed on the horizon. The golden age of big block warfare was ending. Ford discontinued the 427 by 1968. Tooling was scrapped. Production lines shifted. The focus moved to smaller, more efficient engines. Chrysler held on to the Hemi a little longer. But by 1971, even that legend was fading. Insurance companies were charging insane premiums for muscle cars. A young driver could barely afford coverage on a Hemi Charger. Gas prices were rising. The market was changing. The era of unlimited horsepower, of brutal competition, of engines built with no regard for cost or complexity, it was over. And just like that, the war was over. But the legacy, that never died. Today, the 426 Hemi is one of the most legendary engines ever built. Original cars sell for hundreds of thousands, sometimes over $1 million. A numbers-matching Hemi Cuda or Charger Daytona. Auction houses fight over those. The Ford 427, just as iconic. especially the side-oiler versions, especially the ones that powered cars like the GT40 to victory at Le Mans, running over 3,000 miles at full throttle with 0 engine failures. That's the ultimate testament to Ford's engineering philosophy. Power is nothing without reliability. 2 engines, 2 philosophies, 1 brutal, unforgettable war. And here's the truth most people miss. This wasn't just about horsepower. It was about how you make power, how you sustain it, how you balance performance with survival. The HEMI proved that airflow and combustion efficiency could unlock insane performance. It showed that radical design could overcome traditional limitations. The 427 proved that reliability wins races. That engineering isn't just about peak numbers. It's about making those numbers last. And together, they pushed each other to the absolute limit. Every innovation from one side forced a response from the other. Every victory demanded a countermove. The competition made both engines better than they ever would have been alone. That's what real rivalry does. It doesn't just create conflict, it creates progress. If you enjoyed this story, let me know in the comments what you want to see next. Another rivalry, another engine, or another hidden war from the golden age of muscle. And if you want more deep dives like this, make sure to subscribe.